And most small organizations, they want to grow. They want to become big. And some succeed. But most of those succeeding discover that we have not only become big, we have also become slow, rigid, bureaucratic. We've lost a lot of that agility, flexibility we had as a smaller organization. So our journey at Equinor has very much been about trying to find a way back to that agility we had as a smaller organization without losing the benefits of being big. So our big question, how can we be big and small at the same time? The big question for small organizations who not yet have grown but want to should be, how can we grow without ending up in the same misery? The purpose of Beyond Budgeting is not necessarily to get rid of budgets. The purpose is to create these organizations which are more adaptive, more flexible, more human. And in order to do that, we need to change traditional management. It is an illusion that people can or must be managed. It is an illusion that the future is manageable or predictable. So a lot of that control that all these people are so afraid of losing are nothing but illusions of control. A guy called Russell Eckhoff, also dead by the way, he compared corporate planning to a ritual rain dance. It has no effect on the weather, but those who engage in it think it does. And much of the advice and instruction is directed at improving the dancing and not the weather. And trust me, I've done a lot of dancing in my life. Management innovation is about exploring new ways of leading and managing. And management innovation is not great. That is scary. Kicking out the budget, are you crazy? So I think our ability to manage people in today's realities is actually somewhat overrated compared to what we like to think. But it is a label that definitely fits here, traffic light. That's exactly what the traffic authorities are doing. They are managing performance. In the roundabout, it is actually about something else. The roundabout is more about creating conditions for great performance to take place. It is about enabling performance instead of managing performance. And this is more than playing with words. These are two fundamentally different ways of thinking about that important question of how do we get the best possible performance in organizations. That most people want to perform, want to do a good job, want to be involved, want to be listened to, want to be treated as adults. Traditional management is unfortunately much more common out there than we sometimes like to think. Maybe there was a time when this was the right thing to do. Maybe there still are places where this is the right thing to do. But at least for us in Equinor, that discussion is not very interesting. We know that our business environment is way up here when it comes to VUCA level, and we believe that most people at Equinor is on the wise side. If not, we have done an awful job on recruitment, but we haven't. On the leadership side, we need to be more values-based than rules-based. This doesn't mean no rules. It simply means that the stronger we are on the value side, the less rules you often need. We need more autonomy. In this VUCA world, there isn't time to run 9 floors up to get that decision, because then it can be too late. And with these people on board, very often they can make these decisions for themselves. It's about leadership. Right? And of course, it takes more effort to motivate people through mastery, autonomy, purpose, and belonging than to dangle a bag of money in front of people and say, do this and get that. And it doesn't help to have these theory Y leadership visions if you have theory X management processes, which is the case in a lot of organizations. We need more dynamics into these processes. Why on earth shall everything circulate around January to December of the fiscal year, which is an artificial construct from a pure business point of view? Yes, we need to deliver our accounts on that cycle, pay our taxes on that cycle, but why should that be a straitjacket for everything else we are doing? So we need more event-driven, more business-driven processes, less calendar-driven. And last but not least, we need what we call a holistic performance evaluation. Performance evaluation can never be about comparing two numbers and then conclude. That is a too narrow, mechanical language for defining performance. And this, my friends, was a crash course in Beyond Budgeting, or business agility, as I've called it here. It is about addressing leadership and management processes in a coherent, consistent way in order to become more adaptive and more human. Why do we budget? What's the purpose of that budget? And that is a question with not just one answer, there are three answers. Companies use budgets to set targets. Financial targets, sales target, production targets, one purpose. At the same time, they want to use this budget to understand what lies ahead next year in terms of cash flows, financial capacity. So it's a kind of forecast of what next year look like. And last but not least, it is a resource allocation process, financial resources. Fortunately, there is a very simple solution here. We still do the three things, but in three different processes, because these are different things. A target is what we want to happen. A forecast is what we think will happen, whether we like what we see or not. And resource allocation is about what does it take to make it happen. And this can become different numbers if needed. A target can be more ambitious than a forecast, as one example. But the big beauty here lies that when we have separated, we can start to improve each of these. A forecast here is no longer a bid into a target negotiation, separate process. It's no longer a bid for financial resources, separate process. It's just the forecast. And we don't have an annual investment budget where we sit in the autumn the year before and decide everything. We shall invest this much, split on these projects, and then we hand out these bags of money. We don't have that. Instead, we have a principle where we say that the bank is always open. Whether you get a yes or no depends on two things. How good is your project against the criteria we have, financial, non-financial? How does it compete with other comparable projects? And second, do we have the capacity to undertake this project from a financial perspective, from an organizational perspective? So we call this a dynamic resource allocation. And again, we are mainly talking financial resources here. And this is, the parallel in Agile is continuous delivery. This is continuous delivery of decisions and financial resources. For people who say that it's impossible to operate without a budget, we can tell them that, well, we still do what the budget tried to do for us, but since we have separated, we can do each of these in much better ways. The process at Equinor where all of this comes together, this process is called ambition to action. The way we deliver is as important as what we deliver. And with the way we deliver, we talk about the values in this book. And the weighting between the two, in all consequences, for your career, for your pay, is 50-50. So what you see here is an integrated performance process running seamlessly from strategy via risk into finance and further on to HR. We have worked very closely together to make this hang together. And it must hang together, because if it doesn't, people out there notice, I wish it was that easy, and it isn't. Because in our culture, that kind of top-down cascading very easily destroys everything related to involvement, commitment, motivation. If your own ambition to action only becomes a landing ground for instruction from above, then that motivation, commitment walks out the door, and people use their creativity, innovation to find their way around so that they can get their job done. You know, in 20 years' time, we will smile about what was mainstream management in 2019, just like we today smile about the days before the internet, which isn't that long ago. And we should tell our organizations that we can choose to be among the first ones on this journey and get competitive advantage, or we can choose to be dragged into this as one of the last ones. I know what I would have chosen. So it very often starts in finance, but it can start in IT, it can start in HR, or with the CEO.